Hi, I'm Kate Baily. I'm a coach, an author, and a sober mama. And this is Love Sober, the podcast for the sober and sober curious.
You know who made it.
Hi, and welcome back. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by sober legend Veronica Valli. Veronica is a coach, she's an author, she's a psychotherapist, she's been sober for over 20 years. She is the creator of the Soberful Program, and you can find her at soberful.com or veronicavalli.com. So hi and welcome. It's so lovely to speak to you and see you again, Veronica. How are you doing?
Hi, Kate. I'm recording live from my childhood bedroom in Norfolk, England, where I'm visiting family. So you're always a bit weird when you come. Like, do you know what I mean? It's been decorated since I've last inhabited it, but it's also a bit weird.
Well, talking about cycles, right?
Yes. Yeah. You know, it's funny because I walk around the town I grew up in and I see like my teenage self and what I thought and felt then, and it's kind of interesting to be the age I am now and kind of thinking about all, teenage years were a real struggle for me. That it was really hard. I much prefer being this age, even though I'm going into this big hormonal change.
And that's what we're going to talk about, isn't it? We're going to dive in today because both of us are in those kind of menopausing years, the perimenopause. I'm a little bit older than you. And we just wanted to get together and kind of keep this conversation going, keep it open. Yeah, and to kind of talk about also the program that we're going to be running to support sober women, sober and sober curious women who are in a similar stage of life, called Hot Sobriety, and we'll give you details a bit later. But so how is it? Because we spoke a few weeks ago, didn't we, on your podcast, on the Soberful podcast. So yeah, so a bit of an update on that, really.
So it was interesting when we were chatting because I've definitely been in perimenopause, and about 2 or 3 years ago, probably 2020, I think it was, I began noticing that my PMS was getting deeper and longer, and it took me a while to figure it out. And then I get my period and then I realized, oh, that's what it was. And then last year I noticed some symptoms, and I went to see an OBGYN in America, and she put me on the contraceptive pill, and I just bled and I just didn't like it. So I came off of that, and then I've been using exercise and diet to really kind of manage how I felt, and that's worked. And then I noticed, it's really funny because you feel like you're gaslighting yourself. You're like, is it? I don't know if I just not slept well. And I just noticed in the last 2 or 3 cycles, I would get my period and then feel buoyant and be like, oh, I'm back to myself, and realize that for a good 2 weeks, I'd felt like I had a cloud over me. And that I just felt, it's the only way I can describe it. Like I felt like I could feel really angry. And I would do things like I could feel like I'd get really angry with my husband and kids, and I'd take myself off for an hour and then I'd feel all right. And I could feel like this kind of negativity and depression, and then it would lift the minute I had my period. And I realized, and then it was a conversation with you, and it really just stuck in my mind, where you said that you didn't wait for the symptoms to get bad enough. And I honestly that's how I felt. I felt like, oh, is it that bad? I don't know. Half the month I'm sort of all right, and I realized, I thought, no, this is actually bad enough for me. My sleep has not been as great. I haven't been having hot sweats, but I do feel like I'm running hot at night. Like my husband quite a few times would get into bed and put an extra blanket on, and I'm like, oh. So that just stuck with me. It's like, these are symptoms. I'm 50. These are symptoms. And I've done well managing things so far, but let's not wait. So I contacted, in America, there's a specialist menopausal service online, and I did an assessment, and they've diagnosed me, they've given me some HRT and the progesterone.
Yeah.
And that'll be waiting for me hopefully when I get home next week. And so I'm ready. Yeah, I feel like I'm ready. And then of course, being home, I feel like every conversation I've had with my peers, everybody's now started HRT. And I think they've changed, don't they call it something else now? I thought we used to be HRT and now it's something, I don't know. Anyway, I am I'm starting. So that's where I am. I'm kind of feel excited about that, because I don't want my symptoms to get any worse.
No.
And I come across a lot of women in my work who are just, well, A, they're struggling with an alcohol problem, and B, they are really not okay with the hormonal changes that are going on. And you've taught me that it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. There's a lot we can do to support ourselves, and we're not going to just stay silent and grin and bear it anymore.
Yeah. And so you're going on the combined HRT estrogen. So you get the estradiol, and then you're having the progesterone side of it as well, which is
protects the lining of your uterus, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So we need both, so that exactly, it stops the thickening of the lining of the womb. And luckily there are loads of resources that we can look at now to explain much more reliable information coming through, and I'll link some of those below. But that's so. Then part of it is, I think, I don't know if I'm kind of making an assumption here. Part of it are really important is those kind of foundational hormonal support. And if you've been doing all the right things, you've been doing your, let's face it, you're sober, you've been sober for many, many years, looking after your diet, you've been doing some exercise, we know about positive mental strategies and stress relief, so we've been doing all that. I'm still feeling shit, and yet we still have that kind of thought of, like you said, that gaslighty thought of, oh, hang on, is it that bad? Am I really? And I'm like for you, I was like, okay, I'm 50. Look, that's the age. It's not. And then there's that side of, from what I hear, is something about taking control back.
And I don't really know what I was thinking. But I think I was thinking it's almost like alcohol, isn't it? Is it bad enough? That's what I was thinking. Is it bad enough? And I think I'd had that one little foray, and I didn't feel like that worked for me, the contraceptive pill. I didn't want to go down that route again. So it was, is it bad enough to do something about it? And when you reframe that, and it is like, is this how I want to feel all the time? Is this good enough for me? It's like, no, actually it's not. I don't actually want to have half my month that's really like at all. So it's interesting. And again, I think that we are, we've talked about this a lot, that we feel Generation X is the first generation really talking about this in the open and in public, and the generations before us, it was still a very private thing that women suffered alone. And I feel like that, we've had at least 35 years of that kind of thinking that women's bodily matters just need to not be in the public sphere, and not kind of, maybe muttered about in the changing room occasionally. And we've got to just break free of that, I think, because it's not serving any of us.
No, it's like that thing of it being slightly distasteful, isn't it? It's not what we do. And that's so different now. I think it's starting to change, like you say.
There's definitely the women's bodily functions. This is the patriarchal stuff. Women's bodily functions are disgusting and smelly and need to be out of sight for everyone else to feel comfortable.
For sure. And I have noticed, so we've been talking about, so I'm 50, I've just been 54. And I have noticed as well a shift since we last talked. and I was looking at this. It's a great book by Kate Codrington called Second Spring.
I already ordered it.
Yeah. And it's really positive. It's that kind of framing again of things in a cyclical way. And now during this, so from that kind of model, through our perimenopause, so that kind of the summer would be in, after 30s, 20s and 30s, all of that kind of bloom, high energy. So premenopause, perimenopause, that's going towards the autumn where things are, for me, I was on one for the whole of I felt like a lot of, but I think probably because I was supported by hormonal. I went on in the HRT, so that sort of sense made me better. But what I've noticed as I quite recently is I'm going much more into that. I want everyone to fuck off, like in a really big way. And so she would sort of say, okay, well, that's that sort of menopause piece. So, and I will be, it's probably about a year in September. Talk about my menopause party later. But that kind of feeling of this need for retreat and rest in a society that doesn't value retreat and rest at all. Well, why aren't you still working 24/7, pumping this out and pumping that out? I also noticed that there is I want to acknowledge privilege there as well, because not every woman can. We've got to work, right? But I'm interested in where we can carve out and honor that and support each other as women in that need, and not gaslight each other as well with those. I see some of it on Facebook about, I'm so busy, just stop glorifying the cult of busy. It's like, we really need to call bullshit on that bit. So, and then what she says is that afterwards, and this is one of the reasons why I think you and I, if we can do this, the sobriety, menopause, well-being, reframing, reclaiming this transition, then we come through to this second spring, which is where apparently, like Kate Codrington is good, she's collected some great quotes, which I'm kind of trying to dig out about this resurgence. So it's not just like, okay, we're just declining, we're going into the menopause. Actually, it's a hell of a lot better. And I've heard this said. So that is what I'm kind of quite excited about at the moment.
Yeah, I've heard that from some of my clients in their 60s when I've done groups and retreats, and this has come up and because my client group tends to be like between 40 and 65, and the ladies in their 60s who are through it and past it said, it is, it's so great when it's all over and you get your energy back and your sanity, and you've got, still got, hopefully got your health, and there is that second, there's more to us.
Yeah,
like we're not done and dusted because our childbearing years are now behind us. It's kind of fascinating about females, that human females, is that in the natural world, females die off pretty soon after they can't bear children because there's no purpose to them, whereas human females, we can have decades.
And orca whales,
and
there's an aphid apparently.
Really? Orca whales do as well?
Yeah, and they lead matrilineal pods, and they take a very protective roles of the young males.
Interesting.
Which I find it's such a kind of, it's a growth area, right? Because we are, like you said, we're almost like rewriting the narrative. And I think that we are the first, like you were saying, Gen X. There are some voices coming through, but because we use social media like we do, and we've got the platforms and we can hear each other, I think there's going to be more. There are going to be more, and we're rewriting the narrative. And a healthy menopausing, because we still say, we've got this kind of like negative kind of vibe about it. And actually, I believe if we are well supported, we have all the information, we can advocate for our needs. We've got our sobriety, which is one of the power tools. We've got each other. It's like, I feel like transitions, they are difficult, but there's the gold is there. You know, the gold is there, that growth, that depth, that wisdom, those strengths, which then pave the streets of our second spring. We're burning away the dross, aren't we? We're supposed to be like, actually, really don't give a damn what you think about me anymore. Really not going to put up with this. But we do need help. We need help and support with that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot comes to a head in these middle years, and one of my experiences has been I feel stuff that's been unresolved, maybe from when were younger, in our childhoods or our 20s. Is middle age is often an opportunity to finally resolve wounds and unhealthy patterns and dysfunction and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm just thinking of your seasonal thing, you know, if you sort of think childhood and sort of 20s, 30s, childbearing and all that kind of stuff, and then this middle bit, you know, because I was with my cousins at the weekend, and I have one cousin the same age as me, and she's been on HRT for over a year. Then my other cousin is 44, and she's been on it for over a year because she went into perimenopause quite early, about 38. But there's this middle bit where there's a lot to it, and then we have this sort of post 60, you know. This is a season, this 15, it's a season of resolution, and I think it can be physical resolution but also emotional resolution.
I agree.
And that's why I just feel like I see so many women who come to me, it's like, if not now, then when? Right? I like the if I don't resolve this stuff now, if I don't get a handle on my health, if I don't get a handle on this pattern, this behavior, these feelings, then when?
Yeah.
So I think it's a period of resolution as well, which is the kind of like what you're saying. There's almost like, I feel what's required to do that is a withdrawing.
Yeah. And a processing, the time and space to what do I do a lot of walking in the woods at the moment. It's become a foundational practice, and it was quite by accident because I kind of inherited a dog. I was given the black dog of depression. I was and he is a sprocker. He needs a lot of walking, and so I have basically quite by accident inherited a daily walking meditation or nature wood practice. I cannot tell you how much I need it now. I process, I think, I cry, I ache, like I really ache. I've processed just last weekend. I was like, what is this ache? It wouldn't go away. I was listening to kind of, I don't know, Fleetwood Mac. Or usually some Fleetwood Mac will kind of shift something for me or something. And I was like, oh, I feel I have a heartache. And it was like, my kids don't want to hang out with me anymore. They would have, I would have been having to get them out. So now it's the dogs. So cognitively, that's fine. I don't mind. It's Saturday morning. It's quite nice. But as an animal, as a kind of a female animal, there was that. And I felt like there's this many truths piece, there's this complex piece to midlife where it's not binary, it's not either or, it's both. I am aging, that's a gift and a privilege, I love it, and yet I'm processing lots of little deaths. Do you know what I mean? That sounds dramatic, but it felt like that heartache. And I feel like to be present to that is an honor. To be supported in that makes it okay. And then that's part of the process of, like you were saying, that season, almost like that shedding. And with that shedding goes me processing that, you know. I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah, that cycling round. So when I see my teenagers, I'm like, my daughter's 12, of course, and then suddenly it's like, oh, okay, I'm faced with my 12-year-old self, and I have to separate that because obviously I'm not her, she's not me. And this is all happening now, isn't it, for us?
You know, I have to say, I think getting a dog is one of the best things you can do for your mental health.
You
I
do?
just we got a dog 2 years ago. It's the best thing we've ever done. We are all obsessed with him. And
What have you got?
Oh, it's a Habibi bear. It's a therapy dog. So it's a schnoodle. So he's
Oh,
just a massive love bug, and all he wants to do is just, he relentlessly loves us all day, every day. It's like the best
lush.
thing. And I always worried about, like, oh God, taking him for walks. I love it. We love taking him out. It never really, it does, I don't have to say, it rarely feels like a chore or a burden. It feels like a joy. And
I
it
agree.
is, right? Just getting out in nature, it's wonderful.
Mm,
So I have boys. I wonder what it's like having girls and
mm.
seeing them go you can identify
I have
the
a
changes.
therapist. I have a therapist. Thank God. Um, yeah, I think it's like what you said about the integration piece.
Mm,
I really do. And I mean, recently, like I said, my daughter's gone through something which I don't feel like it's my story to tell,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
but it did involve me then going to the therapist and the therapist saying to me after we were doing some EMDR, we were doing all the
mm-hmm.
stuff, and she said, okay, and just remind me how you are different to your daughter. And I was like, okay, okay. And I could list it. And it was like, fine, I'm done. It's fine. The umbilical cord is fine. It's fine. She's separate. I'm separate. Okay, we
Mm-hmm.
can move forward. But I needed support with that. We have those old sayings, don't we? The English sayings of like father, like son, like mother, like daughter. And I do think there's the genetic, there's the ancestral stuff, but part of that is that we didn't have the information and the means to break those family generational things like we do now.
Mm.
And I do feel like it's my kind of responsibility to do my work around that, you know?
100%. Every generation is given an opportunity to break unhealthy, toxic dynamics in their family system, because so much stuff is generational.
Mm.
And yeah, it's our I know I've broken a lot for my kids. Doesn't mean to say I've not given them some dysfunction, because I think that if you're parented by a human being, that's going to be inevitable. But I don't know, I feel like there's some design in that I believe all human beings benefit from self-reflection.
Yeah.
And the only thing I think that prompts us into self-reflection is pain. So, and struggle. And I think it's also very good for our kids to struggle, and to struggle well.
Mm.
We shouldn't steal opportunities for them to struggle. Oh, look, there's your dog. Oh, he's
He
gorgeous.
smells, but he is beautiful.
So I think that self-reflection leads to us having the opportunity to break these patterns of behavior that haven't served us, because we can see them, because we've self-reflected and seen it, because of the pain that it caused. And I think as a therapist, Chip and I always talk about this, when you're with a client and it's all about childhood, like you just want to find out about childhood, because that's where all the answers are. And that you can ask about people's childhood and they'll say, oh, it's good, yeah, it's fine. And then you're not getting what you need. So you say to them, how would you parent, if you had kids, or if you have kids, how would you parent them differently? And that there's always like, oh, everyone has that, oh, I would never do that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have hopefully some things of like, I want to carry on this tradition, or I want, I really loved it when my parents did this, or whatever. But there's always inevitably oh, I would never do X.
Yeah.
And that's where the really interesting information is, and the patterns usually that we have to change.
And that, yeah. And that for me, I suppose, coming at now in that reflective piece and that autumn piece and the processing piece you're talking about, midlife, is that kind of needing to learn the self-compassion piece about what we can't change, and what it's like, oh man, I was trying so hard to not do what they did, and now I've given them a whole load of other stuff, and that sort of that self-compassion. And this is so reminds me of sobriety, of that kind of what we can change and what we can't, you know? So for me, I thought I was saying, you know, I felt like just quite recently that I was, it was like I was playing at a doll's house with Sylvanian families. And I thought if I tried really hard, I could make all the Sylvanians get on and wear really nice clothes and no one would fall out and everything. And it was like, oh, I've realized that I can't control, I'm not the puppet master. I cannot control this.
God, I know.
Oh, holy moly. So I feel really, really grateful to be sober at this point in my life,
my God,
to be able to process this and to transition. And I really want to help other women, as I know you do.
Yeah,
to
I
do
agree.
that with the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. And that that's my client group. I have a lot of women in perimenopause and menopause, and they are struggling massively with an alcohol problem, and the menopause, the hormonal stuff is just ripping them apart. And I'm really, really glad I have so much sobriety behind me, and I've come into this with as optimal health as possible. Because it's just so hard on the body, and it's so hard on our minds as well. And let's just give a little plug for Hot Sobriety. We Kate and I have been talking about this for a long time, so we put together a little workshop. It's on July 10th. It's $97 US, a bit less in pounds. And it's a 3-hour workshop about how to manage the menopause and sobriety at the same time. So go to soberful.com. It's on our social media if you want to come along to that. Kate, what's your title? You're a menopause doula, is that?
So that's part of my training as a menopause doula. And I trained with the menopause school because, like you said, so many of my clients were coming and becoming derailed or really struggling with this midlife piece. And I just, the hormone, as we've discussed today, there's lots in there, this transitional piece, the stress piece for women. It's a very interesting time of life. It's my kind of favorite sort of, it's very juicy, right? But what I think we've both realized is that hormonal piece does need to be supported, and there's a foundational health piece. So we can't just be talking about mindset or relationships.
No.
It's got to be that as well.
You can't mindset yourself out of this.
No.
And I've learned so much along the way, and so much for you is like understanding that you know, at least 2-week drop of just having this black mood was to do with estrogen.
Yeah.
Right. Not realizing once I'd ovulated, my estrogen levels were plummeting, and that's why I felt so miserable and not myself. And then as soon as I had my period, it came back again. I remember I was really unprepared for the baby blues when I had my first child. Like I kind of knew, but I didn't really understand. I didn't have anyone around me. Both my stepson's wife is pregnant, and I've taken him to one side and said, this is what you need to know.
Yeah.
Like this isn't. And he's like, oh, she'll feel emotional. I'm like, no, it's not emotional. The hormones go off a cliff, and you just feel pathetic and cry, and it will be 2 to 3 weeks or so, and then it should get better. And this is this is what she's going to need from you. And I just felt like this pathetic mess, and I didn't understand what was wrong with me. And it really was a big struggle. And then the second time I was much more prepared, and I was able to tell my husband what I needed, and I kind of knew it was coming. And I kind of almost was, with my second son, it was always about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I just had to I just cried, and I'd take myself off to bed and I'd cry, and he would come and hug me, and I'd just be all pathetic, and then I'd feel better, and I'd just have a scheduled cry every day. And then eventually it goes. But these hormonal, like, they can just feel like coming off the edge of a cliff, because it's not emotional. You can't think your way out of it. You can't mindset, you can't exercise your way out of it.
No.
Like understanding, like this knowledge, like what we're going to teach in our program, but this knowledge is really important, because there's lots of things you can do that before you're sort of like, oh, just exercise more, just eat more blueberry, you're just sort of feeling in the dark. with the specific things we have to know about each part of our cycle and what's happening, and specific ways that we can support ourselves. And the big thing is couple that with sobriety. If you are trying to get sober or in early days of sobriety and you have a hormonal drop, I can't imagine. I mean, that I see that derail women all the time.
Yeah, 100%. And it happened to me at 44. So I stopped drinking at 43, did a year. And I can remember I was on a sober retreat when I had the hormonal drop and thought my sobriety was broken. I was on a freaking sober retreat. I should have been bomb proof.
Yeah.
Joking. But yeah. And so, yes, it's a real thing. And it can, like you said, Veronica, it's so true. And we can't mindset our, but we can do, yeah, lots of things to support, and part of that is that information support, and we'll be going through all of that, yeah, in our hot sobriety program. So check it out. I'll put all the links below. And yeah, it's been so lovely to speak to you, Veronica. It's always a pleasure, and I can't wait to do this next month with you in a couple of weeks' time now, isn't it? So
yeah, same here.
Yeah, so, and we look forward to welcoming you and diving into this topic with you, because, you know, it can feel really wobbly, and we can't wait to support you as sober women going through this midlife transition, perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again, Kate.
Thanks, Veronica. So if you're immediately concerned about your drinking, obviously do reach out. There's lots of help out there. You know, find your fit, send up a flare. Soberista still has an anonymous Ask the Doctor service, which is just a great thing. So you can just, you know, reach out, know that you're not alone, reach out, and see you soon for some more chat.